an ADOS dude, there was an ADOS dude named Bill something, Bill the Icon.
Bring up all the dirty laundry.
So as promised, I said I was going to come back and follow up on the video where Trump was touting low unemployment numbers for Black people or for African Americans, and wanted to come back and give you some reasons why, in my opinion, unemployment was at record low levels for the Black community. Before I get into some of the steps that Donald Trump took to make favorable or make conditions favorable in the Black labor market, I want to preface it with a short clip from a video that I published a while back. It's called "The Elephant in the Room," and it's talking about how immigration has historically been used to sabotage Black progress. So I want to preface it because that was one of the main things I believe that Donald Trump did, was to secure the border, and not only secure the border, but to secure the labor market for American workers, first and foremost. So across the board, the steps that he took definitely helped the labor market as a whole, because unemployment as a whole reached record low numbers. So immigration does impact the labor market. The liberal media would have you to believe otherwise. But check out a clip from the video.
We had a panel of experts who testified, and they spanned the ideological spectrum. Each and every one of them agreed that illegal immigration has a decidedly negative impact on Black wage levels and employment levels. If you've got a significant influx of low-wage labor, what does it do? It depresses wage levels, correct? Illegal immigrants displace Black workers in areas that had traditionally been populated by Black workers. And the reason for that is because what you find is Black workers, particularly Black males, are disproportionately concentrated in the low-wage labor market and are disproportionately likely to have no more than a high school diploma. And the same is true for the cohort of illegal aliens, and they compete with one another in areas such as construction, hospitality, service, and agriculture. We had one witness who testified that after he had run the numbers, he found that 40% of the decline in labor participation rates among Black workers over 3 decades was attributable to competition from illegal immigration. It comes to nearly 1 million fewer jobs for Black Americans as a result of the competition from illegal immigrants. And it's not just the employment levels, it's the wage levels also. But we had evidence from the Fed in Atlanta, which did a study on this, to show that illegal immigrants depressed wages by $960 on average, but in certain sectors, such as the hospitality industry, the depression of wage levels was $1,560. And because Black workers were disproportionately concentrated in those areas, they were disproportionately affected.
So you pretty much get the message. I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna play much more of the video. I want to get into some of the steps that Donald Trump actually took that, in my opinion, brought Black unemployment to its lowest levels in history. So let's share this screen here. And this is just a list of some of the steps that President Trump took as far as stemming the tide of illegal immigration and also securing the labor market for American workers. First and foremost, President Trump built over 400 miles of the world's most robust and advanced border wall. And as a result, and places where the wall was constructed, illegal crossings had plummeted 87%. He deployed nearly 5,000 troops to the southern border. In addition, Mexico deployed tens of thousands of their own soldiers and National Guardsmen to secure their side of the U.S.-Mexico border. Excuse me. He ended the dangerous practice of catch and release, which means that instead of aliens getting released into the United States pending future hearings, never to be seen again, they are detained pending removal and then ultimately returned to their home countries. Entered into 3 historic asylum cooperation agreements with Honduras, El Salvador, and Guatemala, an area known as the Northern Triangle, from which many illegal immigrants and asylum seekers come from. But he entered into a historic asylum cooperation agreement with the Northern Triangle to stop asylum fraud and to resettle illegal immigrants in third-party nations pending their asylum applications. Entered into a historic partnership with Mexico, referred to as the Migrant Protection Protocols, to safely return asylum seekers to Mexico while awaiting hearings in the United States. Next up, he fully enforced the immigration laws of the United States, signed an executive order to distribute discretionary federal grant funding from deadly sanctuary cities. Now, sanctuary cities like Atlanta, Washington, D.C., New York City, Chicago, Illinois, Los Angeles, California, I believe the whole of California more than likely is a sanctuary state, are locales where local law enforcement are prevented from or prohibited from asking who they may deem to be an immigrant about their immigrant status. So if somebody is stopped for a traffic ticket, or somebody is apprehended or detained for suspicion of a crime or for committing a crime, even if all signs point to them being an immigrant, perhaps illegal, law enforcement doesn't have a right to ask. And not only that, ICE, when it comes to putting holds on, say, local jail inmates, say a guy gets locked up and he comes up on ICE's radar, ICE may put a hold on that guy and ask the local jail to hold him until they pick him up. In sanctuary cities, this is prohibited. And we've even had situations where local judges have assisted illegal immigrants from eluding ICE, escaping the courthouse even. And I do have a video on my channel where a judge and a bailiff both were arrested and charged and ultimately convicted for helping an illegal alien escape from the courthouse to elude ICE. So Donald Trump took steps to strip discretionary federal grant funding from these sanctuary cities, which was a huge step in my opinion. He fully enforced and implemented statutorily authorized expedited removal of illegal aliens. The Department of Justice prosecuted a record-breaking number of immigration-related crimes. And I digress for a moment because the previous president, Obama, became known as the deporter-in-chief. And he, if I can just off the top of my head, he deported more than 4 million illegal immigrants, somewhere in there, 3.5, 4 million. So they call him the deporter-in-chief. And I would give him credit, but I think he offset the effect of those deportations by creating DACA, deferred action for childhood arrivals. So thereby granting a large swath of illegal immigrants legal status, and also with the TPA. And I believe Trump took some steps to tighten that up as well. Let's continue. So the Department of Justice prosecuted a record-breaking number of immigration-related crimes. He used Section 243D of the Immigration and Nationality Act to reduce the number of aliens coming from countries whose governments refused to accept their nationals who were ordered removed from the United States. So countries who in the past have refused to accept their nationals who were removed or deported from the United States, Donald Trump took steps to reduce the number of aliens that we would accept from those countries. So if you in the past have refused to take back those who we ejected, then we're going to crack down on you being able to send anymore. And that makes sense. Because a lot of times once we get rid of them, it's after they've been convicted of a crime and perhaps done their time, then we kick them out. He ended asylum fraud. He shut down human smuggling traffickers and solved the humanitarian crisis across the Western Hemisphere. Now, you can Google on YouTube or wherever the case may be. And just recently, there was a truckload of illegal immigrants found on the side of the road with maybe 30 to 40 dead bodies. I just put a video up of an illegal immigrant in Arizona who, by all estimations, made $7.2 million in 6 months smuggling in illegal immigrants. So there's a video up I have about that. So human smuggling was top priority. Human trafficking was one of Donald Trump's top priorities. And he took steps to stem the tide. Suspended via regulation asylum for aliens who had skipped previous countries where they were eligible for asylum but opted to forum shop and continue to the United States. So if you were coming from El Salvador, Honduras, or if you were coming from one of these countries and you happen to pass through a country where you might be eligible for asylum, then you're required to seek asylum in the nearest country. But a lot of immigrants, their optimum goal is to reach the United States. So they just, again, they continue to forum shop and make the trek to the United States. Safeguarded migrant families and protected migrant safety by promulgating new regulations under the Flores Settlement Agreement. So that just means the Flores Settlement Agreement, I believe, gives local law enforcement the ability to enforce federal law. So, it is what it is on that one. Proposed regulations to end the practice of giving free work permits to illegal aliens lodging meritless asylum claims. So if your asylum claim is trash, then you won't be able to receive a work permit. And I'm sure they're giving them out by the hundreds and by the thousands at this point in time. Issued internal relocation guidance, I guess helping legal migrants get settled in. Cross-train United States Border Patrol agents to conduct credible fear screenings alongside United States citizenship and immigration services adjudication personnel to reduce massive backlogs. Okay, streamlined and expedited the asylum hearing process through both the prompt asylum claim review and the humanitarian asylum review process HARP. And I'm sure that there's a huge backlog now, as I'm hearing, due to the massive influx of illegal immigrants who flooded our borders since Donald Trump, since Joe Biden took office. Donald Trump launched the Family Fraud Initiative to identify hundreds of individuals who were fraudulently presenting themselves as family units at the border, oftentimes by trafficking children, and did this in order to protect the child welfare. So contrary to popular belief, in which we know lots of border crossers often bring children with them. Children are the greatest sympathy magnets that you could use. So yeah, you present yourself as a family with children, but a lot of times these children don't belong to these adults, and they're just using them to get across the border. Now, what's going to happen to them once they get across the border? Who knows? So yeah, he took steps to identify, and I believe they started doing DNA swabs. Improve screening in countries with high overstay rates and reduce visa overstay rates in many of these countries. Removed bureaucratic constraints on the United States consular officers that reduced their ability to appropriately vet visa applicants, and work with Mexico and other regional partners to dismantle the human smuggling networks in our hemisphere that profit from human misery and fuel the border crisis by exploiting vulnerable populations. Next up, secured our nation's immigration system against criminals and terrorists. Instituted national security travel bans to keep out terrorists, jihadists, and violent extremists, and implemented a uniform security and information sharing baseline that all nations must meet in order for their nationals to be able to travel and immigrate to the United States. And this is a problem now. I believe there's been over 100 persons who were on the watch list, terrorist watch list, who were apprehended coming through the border. And these are the ones that we know about. These are the ones that we actually laid hands on and were able to stop. And so, yeah, Trump definitely cracked down on certain countries, put travel bans in place. Of course, he was deemed racist. But again, in matters of national security, I don't think the race of the individual matters. What matters is their potential threat to national security. So, and let's continue. Suspended refugee settlement from the world's most dangerous and terror-afflicted regions. Very well, because lots of times when these so-called refugees come through, a lot of bad actors are able to slip through the cracks, posing as refugees as well, and end up receiving asylum and being resettled in the United States. So, suspended refugee settlement from any place in the world that was dangerous and had a region that was inhabited with terrorists. He rebalanced refugee assistance to focus on overseas resettlement and burden sharing. And he had an 85% reduction in refugee resettlement. And I'm sure it's probably the other way now. We probably have an 85% rise in refugee settlement at this point. Like I say, over the last 2 years, more than 4 million illegal immigrants have been detected coming across the borders. And that includes almost 1 million gotaways. So what was next? Overhauled, badly broken refugee security screening process required the Department of State to consult with states and localities as part of the federal government's refugee resettlement process. Issued strict sanctions on countries that have failed to take back their own nationals. Again, countries that have failed to take back their own nationals, we're going to crack down on accepting your refugees. That's politics, something for something. It's an exchange. You have to abide by guidelines that we set forth, or the game is off. Established the National Vetting Center, which is the most advanced and comprehensive visa screening system anywhere in the world. Okay, now next up, he protected American workers and taxpayers. Issued a comprehensive public charge regulation to ensure newcomers to the United States are financially self-sufficient, not relying on welfare. Again, which is what's going on right now. And even here in Georgia, the would-be governor, Stacey Abrams, the candidate, she is advocating allowing illegal immigrants to receive public services, welfare, free education, the whole nine. So issuing this comprehensive public charge regulation, ensuring that newcomers were self-sufficient was very important. We don't want to add to the welfare state. Created an enforcement mechanism for sponsor repayment, deeming to ensure that people who are presenting themselves as sponsors are actually responsible for sponsor obligations. Issued regulations to combat the horrendous practice of birth tourism, since if you drop a baby here in the United States, that baby is automatically granted citizenship, thereby granting a pathway for the parents and for other family members to receive citizenship. I did do a story about a residence in California, and this these types of practices know no race or nationality. It's not confined to one race, not confined to one nationality. There was a incident where there was a apartment building in Los Angeles, California, and I believe somebody became suspicious when they saw large deliveries of diapers being dropped off to the building. And come to find out, after the building was raided, after they investigated and raided the building, it was full of Chinese women, Chinese nationals who traveled to the United States in the latter times of their pregnancy, when it was almost time to give birth, took residence in this building, gave birth, thereby granting their child citizenship, upon which, once they secured the citizenship, they sent the children back to their homeland, to be raised in the culture. And, they sent them back over here for high school and college. Akon said the same thing. His dad, they're from Ghana. I guess he's from Senegal. And, his siblings, their father made sure that, they were born here in the States to get that citizenship. And then they were shipped back to Africa. And didn't come back to the States till he was about 12, 13, and citizenship in place, able to come in and take full advantage of any benefits, more than likely set aside for African Americans. But that's another story. But that's another issue with immigration. So birth tourism, and they need to close that loophole for birthright citizenship, because it's not meant for anyone who just happens to travel upon the United States territory, but that's what it's become. Issued a rule with the Department of Housing and Urban Development to make illegal aliens ineligible for public housing. Again, something that Stacey Abrams here in Georgia is advocating for, to make illegal aliens eligible for public housing and education. Issued directives requiring federal agencies to hire United States workers first and prioritize the hiring of United States workers wherever possible. Again, American workers first. Suspended the entry of low-wage workers that threaten American jobs, as you heard in the video that I played in the beginning. Low-wage workers definitely impact the labor market, and everywhere from the levels of employment to the level of wages. So they push wages down and they push labor participation down, particularly in Black communities. We finalized new H-1B regulations to permanently end the displacement of United States workers and modify the administrative tools that are required for H-1B visa issuance. Another good move for the American workers, because the H-1B visa is definitely abused. Certain countries seem to have a monopoly on H-1Bs, specifically India. So putting new regulations in place to make sure that United States workers are not displaced in the workplace, that's a very good move. Definitely contributed to low unemployment. Defended United States sovereignty by withdrawing from the United Nations Global Compact on Migration, because the United Nations is definitely pushing the open borders agenda, sponsored by George Soros. Suspended employment authorization documents for aliens who arrive illegally between ports of entry and are ordered removed from the United States, so that makes sense. And restored integrity, to the use of temporary protected status by strictly adhering to the statutory conditions required for TPS. And again, that's what I said. TPS was something that Obama, I'm not sure if he implemented it, but he damn sure abused it. So yeah, again, just wanted to tap back in with this, something to think about. A long time I was ambivalent to immigration, its impact, and it wasn't until I had a daughter in junior high school, and she went to a school that had a lot of immigrant children. And I can remember going to the school, particularly for award ceremonies and assemblies and things like that. And just remember a lot of the little Latino kids with their parents, and their parents not speaking a lick of English, and, you know, looking like, you know, they haven't been here that long. And the kids are translating for them. And I'm just seeing the amount of resources that are being funneled into, you know, English as a second language. And, you know, all of these accommodations that are being made for the children of immigrants. And it seemed as if they were being prioritized over American children. And thereby I began to do the knowledge and the research, and to look at the numbers and to look at the data. And, you know, once you see it, you can't unsee it. And in my with my disposition, it was a no-brainer. Like, well, this is something that hurts the community as a whole. I've seen it up close and personal. So politically, moving forward, this is something that is on my list of musts. You know, the person that I support, the candidates that I support must have an eye on securing the border. They must have an eye on protecting the American worker. And, you know, because again, these things are what attribute to the bottom line, you know, to your pocketbook. You know, it's going to contribute to, you know, whether you have steak once a month or twice a week or whenever you feel. So, you know, people that don't believe that immigration as a whole, and in particular, unchecked illegal immigration, do not have effects on the labor pool, they're sadly mistaken. And the expert will promptly set you straight. All you have to do is take a look at the numbers. But I'm going to leave you with this. I've talked long enough as it is. Wow. I might have to break this up into 2 videos. But anyway, hop down in the comment section. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please subscribe to the channel. I appreciate you for tapping in. This is your man on the line, Bill Money, signing off. I'll see you on the other side.